Thank you, Faith, and welcome everybody. It's good to be back here with you at Sangha Live for another day of practice. This is our third day in a 5-day series of one of the common Buddhist teachings, certainly from Theravada Buddhism, and that's the 5 spiritual powers. And specifically, we're going to be looking at how to cultivate the 5 spiritual powers in your practice and in your life. And today being the third day, we're on mindfulness. The first of the 5 spiritual powers we covered on Monday was faith, followed by the second power, which is energetic effort, we spoke about yesterday. Today is the spiritual power of mindfulness. Tomorrow we'll look at the spiritual power of concentration, and finally on Friday, the spiritual power of wisdom. Mindfulness. So much has been said about mindfulness. And I was thinking today, how can I bring another angle to this for everybody? Because I'm assuming if you're meditators, certainly Vipassana meditators, certainly mindfulness practitioners, I'm assuming that this is a very common topic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to define mindfulness in just the simplest of terms, and then connect it to your meditation practice. So, like Jon Kabat-Zinn has a beautiful. We could consider Jon Kabat-Zinn as kind of the father of the modern mindfulness movement. You know, bringing mindfulness out of Buddha Dharma and into kind of mainstream, mostly or originally in mental health, but it's been applied in so many beautiful ways, and it's a beautiful expression of the Dharma. But mindfulness alone is not enough for meditation. You have to have energetic effort and concentration. Mindfulness needs to be balanced or sandwiched or supported by energetic effort and concentration. But in that mindfulness movement, Jon Kabat-Zinn, if I remember his definition of mindfulness, it's paying attention in a particular way with curiosity and non-judgment. Paying attention in a particular way with curiosity and non-judgment. What a beautiful way to talk about mindfulness. What a beautiful definition of mindfulness. So paying attention in that specific way, which we'll talk about in a minute, but with curiosity. So there's always curiosity in the experience and non-judgment. So whatever's arising is accepted. Judgment kind of takes over in our practice from time to time. It keeps us separate from the experience. Non-judgment keeps us in contact with the experience. So that's what mindfulness does. So that's a beautiful definition. You just kind of feel into it energetically. Mindfulness is paying attention in a particular kind of way with curiosity and non-judgment. Beautiful. Now, from a Buddhist psychology definition, the mindfulness is defined quite differently, but I'm just going to speak about one aspect.
Hi, Miles. Sorry, just interjecting here with the chat. Some people are saying
what's going on?
There's a delay between sound and audio, sound and video. So maybe you could try just refreshing. It might be an internet issue on your side.
I think. Let me see something.
Oh yeah, your lips are moving.
What happened.
Okay.
How about now? Is that better now?
No.
Testing 1 2 2. Testing 1 2. I think my earbuds took over the sound. How about now?
Yeah, it is a bit better. Maybe we can hear from others.
Better?
Does it sound better? People are saying it sounds like underwater sound.
Yeah, that would be the earpods. Now that I'm listening to the earpods and I'm speaking through the microphone, so it should be better. Testing 1 2 2. I can refresh if it works.
Your lips.
Should I just refresh my site?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Okay, testing 1 2 2.
Yeah, that sounds good. All good.
Thanks. Rain falls mainly on the.
All good.
All right. All good. Faith, you're gonna let me sing? That's a different online community. I won't bore you with I won't let you suffer with my singing.
Okay. Lizzie, I'm going to ask you to slow down a bit.
Yeah, great. Okay, thanks, Faith.
You've got a lot to say, Lizzie.
All right. So recap mindfulness, that's today's topic. We're going to be looking at a very simple definition. Jon Kabat-Zinn defines it as paying attention in a particular way with curiosity and non-judgment. I'll say that slower. Paying attention, mindfulness is paying attention in a particular way with curiosity and non-judgment. Beautiful definition. Buddhist psychology defines it quite differently, and that's because Buddhist psychology is a phenomenological exploration of human consciousness. Buddhist psychology is a phenomenological explanation or investigation of human consciousness. Okay, now for meditation, that's awesome. Let's just get into this phenomenological space, and that's the approach that we're going to be taking today. But because Buddhist psychology is a phenomenological investigation of human consciousness. So in other words, if I'm doing therapy and a thought of my mother comes up, well, that could be very interesting. Let's open it up. Let's do a process on it. Let's see where that leads. That's great. When we're doing therapy, that's kind of what we want to do. When we're doing meditation, mindfulness, and by the way, that therapeutic approach, we need mindfulness. But when we're doing mindfulness-based meditation, you can do that, and it can be very, very beneficial, of course. But when we're doing mindfulness-based meditation, when you're practicing in a way to go into deeper states of consciousness, when you're practicing in a way to progress along the developmental stages of insight knowledge, we're not opening issues. Thought of my mother is simply a thought. It's no different than a thought of a cat, a thought of, is my microphone working? It's just a thought. And all thoughts, like all phenomena in the universe, physical and non-physical phenomena in the universe, is conditioned by impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and non-self. And in mindfulness-based meditation, Vipassana meditation, we want to see deeper and deeper into these three characteristics of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and non-self. These three characteristics are actually below the threshold of perception. They're there all the time, as long as there's been a universe, maybe even before, maybe after, who knows. But as long as there's been a universe, and as long as there have been physical phenomena in this universe, and as long as there has been non-physical phenomena, energy or whatever, that phenomena is conditioned by impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, non-self. That is a Dhamma, an ultimate reality. Mindfulness, from a Vipassana, or from a mindfulness meditation point of view, is to see into that. We don't have to go looking for it. We just see what's there, and it leads us into deeper and deeper experiences of those universal characteristics. So the definition of mindfulness that we're going to work with today, keep it very simple, from Buddhist psychology, is the characteristic of mindfulness, the quality of mindfulness, the basic experience of mindfulness is deepening. From Buddhist psychology, they actually say non-superficial. It doesn't stay on the surface. It deepens, it sinks. So as we activate mindfulness and we know the experience that we're observing, that knowing deepens. Every moment that I'm mindful, that knowing is going to deepen. Every moment that I'm mindful, that knowing is going to deepen. Mindfulness has a simple quality of deepening. There's much more to say about it, but let's keep it simple. So what does that mean? When I sit down, close my eyes, introspect, turn in with mindfulness, pay attention to the breath, I'll know the breath in a specific way, in that very moment that I know the breath. As I continue to observe with that same gentle relationship, the same quality of attention, that knowing is going to deepen. I'll know my breath in a deeper way. As I continue to observe it, I'll know it in a deeper way. For example, at the beginning, I'll sit down, I'll watch my breath, and I see kind of the middle of the breath. Yeah, no, the breath, it's a long breath, it's a short breath, it's a fast breath, it's a slow breath, it's a loose breath, it's a tight breath, whatever. I'm going to know that. And then as I continue to observe, I'm going to know that that type of breath, that quality of breath, I might be able to observe it all the way to the end of the breath. So as I observe the first two, I don't really see the end. Then as I stay with another breath and that knowing deepens, I'm able to see how the breath goes all the way to the very end. I'm breathing in and I follow that breath right to the end. The same way that a car comes to a stop sign, car can slowly, gradual stop at the stop sign. Car sometimes it bounces to a stop. Sometimes it hits the brakes and suddenly stops. Other times a car just gets close to the stop sign and then goes on. Same with our breath. What's going on when you check right now? Check right now. What's going on with your breath right now? Do you see the end? If you don't see the end, it's okay. Don't worry about it. But if you do see the end, how is it coming to a stop? This is a mindfulness investigation. Phenomenologically, not how we want it to be, not how we imagine it's going to be. What's actually happening there? How is it coming to a stop? And when it stops, is there a pause? And if there's a pause, what's the quality of that pause? If you're mindful of those experiences, that level of attention, if you're mindful of those experiences, the knowing of those experiences is going to deepen. And as the knowing of those experiences deepens, the experience is going to change, guaranteed. And if you can follow the end breath all the way to the end, and if you can see if there's a pause or no pause, and if there's a pause, what's the quality of the pause? And from there, like a cat looking at a mouse hole, you will see the very beginning of the next breath, of the in-breath, the out-breath, excuse me. You'll see the very beginning of the out-breath. And when you see the very beginning of the out-breath, when you're knowing it with mindfulness, with the very subtle attention of mindfulness, when you're knowing the beginning of that out-breath, you'll know how it is in the middle, and you'll know how it is in the end. Phenomenologically, qualitatively, it's fast, it's slow, it's long, it's short, it's tight, it's loose, it's pleasant, or it's unpleasant. No preference. Mindfulness has no preference. No regulation, no manipulation of the breath. It's important to remember that because often when we observe the breath changes pretty quickly and it becomes tight. And almost every meditator kind of makes the mistaken assumption, oh, this is not, my meditation, something's wrong. My breath is tight and I can't meditate. No. It's not becoming tight in spite of your practice. It's becoming tight because of the mindfulness practice. So I mentioned this, I think, yesterday, but regulation of breath is really good. Breath work is very good. It's a very healthy practice. But in Vipassana meditation, you don't want to do it. Or if you choose to do it to kind of, find a bit more comfort in the practice, it's fine. Do it for a minute or two and then let it go. Let it go. Go back to what was going on. Because if the breath is loose and it becomes tight, that's the forward leading path. If you regulate it so it's relaxed and loose again, it's kind of going backwards. And don't worry if the breath becomes loose and then it becomes tight at some point in the future, this sitting, next week, next month, next year, at some point in the future, it's going to become loose again, I promise. Ultimately, it becomes incredibly refined, free, and airy, no problems. But know the breath and let the mindfulness, let the knowing sink, let the knowing deepen. You're knowing the breath more and more. And if we go back to this kind of seeing the beginning of the out breath, following it all the way through the middle, and mindfully knowing the end. How is the out breath stopping? Metaphor of a car stopping at a stoplight. Sudden, gradual, smooth, choppy, not stopping at all. What's going on? Knowing that, and then when it stops, knowing the if there's a pause, what's the quality of that pause, and how does the next in breath begin? If you can be mindful in that manner, letting the mindfulness sink, let the knowing of the experience sink moment by moment, breath by breath, there will be zero gap for thoughts to come in. You'll be right there with the practice. Now, of course, thoughts do come in. Of course, the mind slips away because that's a very delicate balance to pay attention that way. The mind will slip away. You'll think, mind will wander off, and that's all okay. You can pay attention to the wandering mind in the exact same way. Knowing it, knowing what its qualities or characteristics, let the knowing of that experience with differentiated awareness, not identified as, but being mindful means to take it as an object with differentiated awareness. Know it, know its qualities and characteristics, know what's happened to it. If it's a thought and you have and you have an effective mindful observation of the thought will sooner or later, usually sooner, will disappear. Come back to the breath. So as we do this practice, as we go into our practice, it's really simple. Mindfulness has the quality of sinking. So every time you remember to kind of, I'm being mindful, this is a mindfulness meditation, know what's happening. For example, the breath, whatever your technique may be. I'll talk about the breath. Know the breath. Know the qualities and characteristics of the breath. That's that deepening. And then notice and know what happens to the breath. That's further deepening. When things start to change in the breath, it can be helpful to remind yourself you are seeing the universal characteristic of anicca, and that is good. That is good. If things change and they start to become a little bit unpleasant, like tightness or some type of subtle dissatisfaction, know that you are seeing the universal characteristic of dukkha, unsatisfactoriness. Your vipassana is effective. And if you're having experiences like, it's not so satisfying, but you're just able to be mindful, patient with it, and then suddenly something shifts, it lets go, the breath becomes free, attention is effortless. Know that you are seeing the universal characteristic of anatta, non-self, emptiness. Mindfulness will gradually, systematically lead us to seeing these three universal characteristics, which are normally below the threshold of perception. But as mindfulness deepens, these will begin to appear in our practice. Okay? Let's sit for about 25 minutes. I'll give a short guidance, and then we'll do some Q&A afterwards. So as you settle in, let's take a moment and reflect first on Jon Kabat-Zinn's definition of mindfulness from the mindfulness community. Mindfulness is paying attention in a particular kind of way with curiosity and non-judgment. Take a breath and let that kind of land. Paying attention in a particular way with curiosity and non-judgment. And then reflecting on the basic characteristic of mindfulness as defined in the Abhidhamma, as defined in Buddhist psychology, that the characteristic of mindfulness is non-superficial. Mindfulness sinks. That the part of my mind that is being mindful and the experience that is being mindfully observed, the knowing of that experience deepens. As I observe my breath in this moment, if you're doing body scan or something else, please continue to do that. I will speak about the breath. As I observe the breath in this moment, just know what's there. We don't have to go looking for anything. And there are times, especially in the early stages of the practice, we can't even see the breath. So if that's the case, just simply take your palm of one hand, place it on the belly, and feel the expansion of the belly as you breathe in. Feel the expansion of the belly as you breathe out. Feel all the qualities, characteristics in that movement. Knowing the precise physical sensations in the movement on the belly, the movement of the belly on the in-breath, knowing the precise physical sensations of the movement of the belly on the out-breath. Not analyzing, not pausing to think about, or if the mind does pause and think, just be mindful of that. Coming back to the breath and allowing the knowing of the breath to meet the breath exactly where it's at. No agenda, no preference, no manipulation. Accept the state of the breath. Know the qualities and characteristics. And know what happens. This is the deepening of mindfulness. Mindfulness knows what the qualities and characteristics are on contact. As mindfulness deepens, it knows the further, deeper qualities and characteristics in the process. And as mindfulness deepens, it knows what happens, any changes, subtle or gross changes that appear in the process. Should the mind slip away? When the mind slips away, the moment you remember that you're aware of it, be mindful. Maybe even take a moment and be mindful of how it might have bounced back up to the surface or bobbed back up to the surface. The deepening has gone. Reset your mindfulness and be mindful of that deepening of the knowing of experience. Rinse and repeat. Being mindful of each breath and each moment by moment, breath by breath. Bring your mindfulness back to the body. Feel the body and allow the knowing to deepen. Bringing the mindfulness back to the breath. Feel the breath and allow the knowing to deepen. Bring your mindfulness to your mental state. Know your mental state and allow the knowing to deepen. Being mindful of the space on the inside and allowing the knowing of that inner experience to deepen. And as we slowly come out of the meditation, be mindful of the space on the outside as you open your eyes and allow the knowing of your external experience to deepen. The basic characteristic of mindfulness is that it deepens. It's non-superficial. It is sinking. And when we're not mindful, we're floating back to the surface. I did kind of fail to mention at the beginning that mindfulness is our key, core, transformative practice in Vipassana meditation. There are other types of meditation, complementary, supportive meditations, concentration-based meditations. But when we shift to mindfulness, even though we must have energetic effort in a balanced way, even though we must have concentration in a balanced way, mindfulness is the key. So before we open up to questions, I just want to a quick reminder that even though Faith had mentioned it before, Nick has a question. You can go ahead and write your questions or raise your hand, whatever you prefer. Sangha Live is brought to you by a lot of people with big hearts, to share the Dhamma, to share the teachings of the Buddha Dharma, to share mindfulness, to share meditation with basically the world. And it's I love this platform. It's very beautiful, very nice, works very well. We get to come here and gather together, but behind the scenes, there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of cogs, a lot of things that are needed to be tended to regularly, daily. And for that, any support would be greatly appreciated. Dana, generosity, basically, so much about our Buddhist meditation or meditation practice in general is simply offered with an open hand, freely and generously. And we just want to return the generosity with the basic idea that we support the Dharma, and that the Dharma supports us, and it creates this beautiful wheel of support. I believe Faith has posted a link in the chat, so if anybody wants to offer dana, then just click there. Okay, so we have about 12 minutes for questions, and if anybody wants to come on live, please simply raise the hand. Let's see. Okay. Nick has a question. Thank you. Please, could you say more about mindfulness revealing manifestation of anatta, non-self, in mind wandering? Well, I mean, anatta is going to reveal itself in mind wandering the same way that it reveals itself in any other phenomena. It could be simply observing the breath. It could be mind wandering. Actually, if the mind is wandering, you won't see any of the universal characteristics because there's no mindfulness. Wandering mind implies that mindfulness has drifted away. When we bring it back, and there's still an energy or momentum of that wandering mind, and if we're able to observe it, what thoughts are happening, what's the tendency to wander off there? Could it be that there's some desire that I've wandered off into, or could it be there's some unpleasantness that I don't want to look at, so I move away? If we become mindful of that whole thing, then we'll become mindful of the phenomena that's arising there. Again, it could be a resistance to something I don't want to see. It could be desire to think about something else. It could be simply that my mind just slipped away. As you become mindful of that, you'll know the qualities and characteristics. As you become mindful of the qualities and characteristics, at some point, you'll see the three universal characteristics. Either you'll see anicca, or you'll see dukkha, or you'll see anatta. Either you'll see impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, or non-self. These are constantly cycling around. You don't really see the two of those at the same time. There's some overlap in that transition, but you won't really see. I shouldn't say that. I won't say that. Generally speaking, you'll just be observing one of those at a time. And the way that anatta can manifest in wandering mind, for example, is simply by knowing the experience. And the phenomenological experience of anatta is that wandering mind will suddenly pop, disappear, dissolve, fade away, shred. It's gone. When it's gone, you're seeing the universal characteristic of anatta. Especially if you're seeing, I shouldn't even say especially, precisely if you're seeing that whole process. When anatta comes online, when our threshold of perception is deep enough to be able to see the universal characteristic of anatta, things disappear. The disappearance of things happen relatively quickly. It could be suddenly, it could be a few moments, it could be a few seconds, but they disappear. When you're seeing disappearance, you're seeing anatta. When you're seeing dissolution, you are seeing anatta. Okay, Nick, I hope that's helpful. Natalie. So we have one more question. So if anybody else has questions, please bring them in. I would recommend any questions around mindfulness is great. But if you have a specific practice-related question, it's going to be the most helpful for our time here. Natalie, could you say something about knowing mental states? Okay. I'm very aware of the body and the breath, but when you mentioned bringing attention to the mental state, there was an observation of empty mind. Okay. No thoughts. So I named it neutral. Okay, good. And by naming it, I think you probably mean by labeling it. You are identified it's neutral. It's neither active or passive, but it's neutral. And neither pleasant or unpleasant, but neutral. Okay. So your first question, could you say something about knowing the mental state? So let's see, what do you say? Yeah, when I mentioned to bring your attention to the mental state, what were you aware of? You were aware of empty mind. That is knowing the mental state. I have a whiteboard here because I teach here as well. So I have a big whiteboard, and there's some notes on here because I've got some projects that I'm involved with. It's not empty. There's something about my community. There's something about retreat I'm in. All this kind of projects are up there. When I take the eraser or whatever and I wipe it off, it's an empty whiteboard. That's the state. Right now, the state of the whiteboard is that there's 3 projects on there. Some of them are written in blue, some of them are written in green. There's lines, there's underlined titles, and there's bullet points. That's the nature of that. If I erase it, the nature would be the erasing. When I'm done erasing, the nature of it is whiteness. In this case, it's a little bit, there's also some shininess to it. There's a squareness to it. There's rounded edgesness to it. And that's all. That's knowing the nature. If I touch it, its coolness is the nature. If I tap it, its hardness is the nature. So what is the nature of the mind? Could be busy, could be quiet. Sometimes our minds are contracted. Sometimes our minds are relaxed. Sometimes our minds are drifty. Sometimes they're sleepy. Sometimes the mind is bright. Sometimes the mind is sharp. Sometimes the mind is dull. Sometimes the mind is, before coffee mind, after coffee mind, whatever's there. So, Natalie, imagine that you're outside and you're in the sun all day, and you go into a house where it was dark. You open up a door to a dark room, and you look in the room. You say, "What's there?" Completely dark, and your eyes haven't adjusted yet because you've been out in the sun. Nothing. We think, "Oh, there's nothing there," but actually, that's not the nature. What you're seeing, the nature would be blackness or darkness. As you continue to observe that, and in this example, as the eyes adjust from the outside light to the inside light, I think the pupils will be opening, more light comes in, you'll say, oh no, it's not really dark, it's kind of bluish or dark grayish or blackish. Or then as you continue to observe that, the nature would change. You say, oh no, there's something over there. And it seems like there's something over there, and it seems like there's a certain depth. And as you continue to observe, as the pupils open, more light enters, you say, oh, no, that looks like a sofa over there, and that looks like a piano over there, and there's a mirror or whatever. You'll know that the nature of this example, you'll know more. Same thing with our mind. The more we observe into it, the more we're going to see. The more you observe into empty mind, as you wrote down here, empty mind, the more the qualities and characteristics of emptiness will appear. Now, emptiness does tend to be void. True emptiness and experience of emptiness is void of experience. However, there is always going to be an attribute there. The attribute might be down to the ultimate reality of anatta, non-self, or it might be anicca, that there's some change, or it might be a dukkha, that there's some dissatisfaction. But empty mind tends to be more of an anatta, non-self experience. But it will have some attribute. Even if it's difficult to articulate, there's something there. There is always. Even in pure consciousness, there's something there, even if it's emptiness. It's an experience of emptiness. Okay, Natalie, I hope that helps. We have a few more minutes. Patricia. Clive wants to come on screen. Sure, Clive, come on screen. How do I do that? Or maybe Faith can help me. I'll quickly answer Patricia's question. When you emphasize that the seeing, one of the 3 characteristics happens when mindfulness is deep enough, yes, is really helpful for me. Also, you remember that mindfulness applied in the service of investigating these 3 characteristics landed. Beautiful. That's great, Patricia. Let's get Clive on screen, and I'll just say a quick word about Patricia's statement is that, remember, the 3 universal characteristics are always there. The 3 universal characteristics are always there. It's just that our threshold of perception cannot see them. When our mindfulness deepens enough, our practice deepens enough with insight, specifically the end of the 3rd stage of insight knowledge and the 4th stage of insight knowledge, we begin these things. We see these things directly. So that's great. Faith, I don't know how to bring Clive on screen. Does he have to raise his hand?
Yeah. I've just invited Clive.
Oh, okay.
Great, Clive, you should get a little, there he is.
Hi, Clive.
Hi, Miles.
We just have 2 minutes here, so.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. It's similar to what Patricia put in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to kind of see whether this actually works. It's one thing I wanted to do, this coming on screen thing. But also, I wanted to share and explore a little bit this beautiful concept you shared of how when mindfulness deepens, the three characteristics appear.
Yeah.
And just say that I'm been exploring this, and I think I get anicca, I think I get anatta, and I've been struggling with, sorry, anicca, I get dukkha. I've been struggling with dukkha, with anatta, this
Anatta.
the non-self bit. And this morning, just I think with the way you were leading, in my meditation, I think I got a glimpse of anatta. It came when I started to think, or my mind was realizing that my breathing is interconnected with the rest of the world, that what I'm breathing in is something that's given, this sense of interbeing with the rest of the world, not being. And I wondered, I don't know, it just felt like, oh, maybe this is a glimpse of anatta. And I just wanted to share that, I guess, and see if you had anything to say about that, and if you had any advice about how I work with this.
Well, great, Clive. I mean, I would have to, again, I think we're really limited with time here because I guess there's a hard stop at 10 o'clock and it's just now 10 o'clock. So let me see if I can fill up this last minute. Interbeing, yeah, it's a great idea. I like that. I certainly align with it, but phenomenologically, there's no such thing as interbeing. Now you might come out of an experience and feel expanded and interconnected. Cool. We call that interbeing. Phenomenologically, what's happening for an expanded sense of self to happen, the limited boundaries of the self, the Cliveness or the Milesness, those have to go through some relaxation or dissolution. That relaxation process, which has specific phenomenological experience, like things will disappear, boundaries will disappear, you'll feel the breath is tight and then suddenly it becomes loose. There's lots of ways to say it. That relaxation of boundaries is an experience of anatta. Anytime you're having a relaxation of boundaries, but especially knowing phenomenologically that that's what's happening, that suddenly there's an expansiveness, there's a relaxation, the milesness has receded to the background, I'm opened up, I'm more connected to the inside and the outside. That would generally be the characteristic of anatta. There's just one way, one of the many, many ways that the phenomena of the characteristic of anatta can appear phenomenologically. We could go more into that, Clive, but I think we're going to have to keep it short there today. We're already over time. What I recommend, because I think you were here also the previous days, if you come tomorrow, or anybody for that matter, if you want to jump on sooner, we can actually dialogue a bit more about it. Okay?
Thank you.
Yeah, I hope that's helpful, Clive. And it sounds like a great experience, yeah. And I would say that that's probably anatta. All right? Okay, everybody, thank you so much for joining me today and for joining us today. Tomorrow we will go into the spiritual power of concentration, cultivation of the spiritual power of concentration in our practice. I want to wish you all a great day of practice, and may your practice of mindfulness meditation continue to sink through the knowing of your experiences throughout the day, and may that lead you forward forever and always forward on your path of practice. Thank you, everybody.